All right, thank you very much for the introduction. Just to make sure that Samson is not going to rush in here and say that he's very upset that he lost his job. So I'm no longer the director of the Center for Renewable and Sustainable Energy Study. That is now Professor Samson Mamfeli. So I happen to be the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering right now, which I think is a much less stressful job than running a center where you're responsible to make sure that everybody's salaries will be paid. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you a little bit about the fourth industrial revolution, data science, big data, and all these other very important words. And I have to start with a disclaimer. So the first disclaimer, of course, as you heard, I'm not an industrial engineer. I did study 2 years of industrial engineering here at Stellenbosch, but then I gave up and I switched to mechanical engineer. So I'm a mechanical engineer by training, and I had a very interesting career where I first worked in, as you heard, noise and vibration and human response to noise and vibration. Then I switched, and for 10 years I worked in renewable energy. And now I'm going to talk to you about the digital disruption. So the disclaimer is, I know nothing about this field, okay? So whatever I say, I say something wrong, you can put up your hand and say, you're talking absolute nonsense, and you can correct me. I also want, at the end of this presentation, to get feedback from you and how you see this whole new disruption going to act on us and how we as universities should respond to this. And I've changed the title a little bit, right? So I've said, not only should we survive, but perhaps we can learn and thrive. And I really believe that after a visit the last week or so in the US. So let's see if technology is going to work on it. All right, so just as an introduction, the fourth industrial revolution has fundamentally changed the world of work. And I'm sure that yesterday you had discussions around this, and you will have more discussions around this. In the South African context, we also have a particular challenge in that a lot of the students that enter into engineering programs are very well versed in this new digital world of ours. A lot of the kids come in here and they can program and they can run their cell phones and do a lot of things. But in the South African context, we also bring in a lot of learners from communities which are not as privileged as some of the others, and we really have a hard time bringing them up to speed into this new universe of ours as well. The other challenge we have at universities is that we are slow, right? We are very, very slow. And, well, we're full of politics as well, so that's something else. But we are very slow to react. And for instance, if we decide today we're going to have a new program in engineering, data engineering, whatever we want to call it, we will only be able to take in, if we're lucky and things work out, the first students in 2021, which means we will only have the first graduates graduate in 2024. So 6 years from now, we will be able to make a difference. And by that time, this is all old news. So that is a real challenge that we have at universities, is how to be agile and adapt, especially in this fast-changing world. I'm not going to go through all this and explain to you what the first, second, and third industrial revolutions were all about, but I think it's very important to note the difference between the first three and this fourth one. And a big difference that I've noticed is that if you look at the first one, steam engines, iron and steel industry, this was very mechanical engineering related, right? So there's a very strict discipline associated with that one. Then if you look at the second one, electrical infrastructure, again, internal combustion engine, oil, steel, automotive. So now all of a sudden it's the mechanical engineers playing a role, but also the electrical engineers coming into this whole world of industry and coming up with new solutions and solving problems. And then the third one, the digital revolution, of course, this is where the electronic engineers really, really played a very important role, as well as the computer scientists and the programmers and other people. But you can see that this was very fundamentally sort of geared towards certain disciplines in engineering. And now we are at the fourth industrial revolution, and all of a sudden, it's no longer very discipline specific. It is actually a convergence, right, of the physical, the biological, and the digital systems, supported by fast computing, vast data storage, and the ubiquitous internet, right? So firstly, it's no longer only engineers even in this revolution. Everybody now can play a fundamental role in this whole Industry 4.0 that you also sometimes talk about. So fundamentally, there's a big difference between the first three and the fourth one. This combination of different areas of speciality also poses a very unique and new challenge to the engineers and the scientists that we as universities prepare. Because all of a sudden, it's no longer going to be just a bunch of mechanical engineers sitting around the table discussing, you know, what the new internal combustion engine would look like. It is a lot of other people, and not only engineers, that will sit around this table and contribute. You can see that I made a list of some of the buzzwords there, and you know, buzzwords come and go, but data analytics, machine learning, and big data, which is more or less the data science that I'm going to move into the rest of this presentation. I heard this word, or I saw this word the other day, a data deluge, right? And that's for me such a apt description. It's like, it's just everywhere. It's just so much. It just sort of rushes at us, and we are all sort of overwhelmed by the data. And data are now readily available in a variety of fields. It started a lot in science, especially in astronomy, and our very proud South African project, the Square Kilometre Array with radio astronomy, where there's huge amounts of data available. Then, of course, in biology, genetics, agriculture, a lot of different fields where there's a lot of data available. Health systems, both on the clinical side, but also on the business side. Financial system, there's always been a lot of data available, stock prices, company results. In the commercial side, and consumer behavior is becoming a very key aspect of this new revolution as well. They know, like you do an internet search on buying a new motor car, and for the next 5 days, you'll be bombarded by advertisements of Volkswagen, Polo GTIs, and all these other fancy cars that you can buy. But even in manufacturing, and the ability to transfer designs and drawings seamlessly between departments and organizations and countries. And you design a vehicle in Germany, the parts get manufactured in Mexico, and the vehicle gets assembled in the US. And then the real scary part is this Internet of Things. Sensors are now so cheap and so widespread and so connected, right? So somebody now will know this evening, you know, how many steps I took, right? It will know my heartbeat, right? That's amazing. No? And then you talk about machines, measuring temperatures, measuring acceleration, measuring flows, measuring speeds, measuring currents. All that information is now readily available, and it's up there, and somebody will have access to it to do something with. So lots of data. Now, how is Stellenbosch University trying to respond to this? So we are talking about establishing a school for data science and computational thinking. It's something that I looked the other day. I wrote the first proposal on this already last year. So again, universities are extremely fast, right? So we started last year with a proposal on of a data school, and we're sitting here a year later, and we still haven't resolved what the data school would look like and where it is, etc. A year of discussions, negotiations, and we're still not out of the blocks. That's the academia for you. However, the vision of the school is to work across all 10 faculties of the university to span the entire academic project. So it's not only on the postgraduate, the research, and the specialist consulting side. It's also very important in the undergraduate program, and we'll come back to that. The idea is that the school will coordinate and integrate the various activities, because data is owned by everybody these days, right? And data science, in some sense, is practiced by people in a lot of different areas in the university. So you cannot bring them all together in one school, but the school can contribute towards how these people interact, collect, and discover knowledge from their data. And also then to provide a platform, collaborative learning and research. And of course, what we do is we discover new knowledge, we come up with new ideas, applications, and products. So the one thing that we have been asked a few times is these words, computational thinking. Now, I have to admit, I put those words in there for political reasons, not really for very strong technical reasons. So I had to come up with some way of explaining, you know, what computational thinking is all about. But this to me is a very valuable set of blocks that describe this whole area of data science, and I had this checked by some data scientists and they corrected that. So I think it's fairly correct. But if other people want to correct me more, it will be fantastic. So basically, you have to capture the data, or you generate the data, or you collect the data, but you have to get the data, right? Once you have the data, you have to clean it up, you have to structure it, you have to audit it, you have to do some verification on the data. The next step would be, now you have to exploit the data, you have to analyze it, and it also includes statistical analysis. Right? And one of my current bugbears is statisticians think they own data science. But I would venture to say that traditionally stats end there, right? And then there are two other blocks that's still left. So the one is the data modeling, mining, knowledge discovery, including artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? So there's a lot of new work being done in this area. And then the one area which I think a lot of people forget is to tell the story, right? Somebody has to go tell the story. It's no use discovering all this wonderful new knowledge from your data, but you as an engineer is not able to transfer that information to the management, to the society, to the people that needs to make use of this. So you have to come up with ideas to visualize the data, to present the data, and also now people want to interact with data. People want to play with the data themselves to discover things. And there's a big part here that is sitting more in the humanities side than in the hard sciences. Then, of course, we had to say, you know, computational thinking is sort of the data engineers working in this direction. I'm not convinced about these two arrows, so if somebody can help me, it will be fantastic. And then analytical thinking, the data scientists work in that direction. So those two arrows I'm still not convinced about, but at least now I can say, see, there is some computational thinking in data science as well, and at least that warrants technically why we should call our school the School for Data Science and Computational Thinking. So we have a vision for the school, which doesn't seem to be contested by many people at the moment. So it's a central hub of learning and research, and to nurture, promote, and facilitate integrated data science to prepare our graduates, right? So our undergraduates and our postgraduates, and to support our academics for this fourth industrial revolution. So that's, again, vision. This is what we want to do. And then I'm not going to go through all this. Sorry, it should have said mission there, not vision. So the mission is all the different steps that we have to do. And for those of you who are from universities, it always becomes tricky when you put the word undergraduate modules in any mission of a center or a school that doesn't sit within a particular faculty, because academics are very possessive of their fields of expertise. They're very possessive of where their students go, because you know what? The budget rewards you for teaching these modules. So that is probably where we're kind of stuck at Stellenbosch right now. But then, of course, the most important thing is that it will be a gateway for industry. And I think that is really, really important, that we must open up the dialogue between the academics and the people in industry, people like yourselves, to interact with us, to come with us with your problems, to come with us with your requirements, to assist us to teach and educate the engineers of the future. So I had the privilege of joining a study tour to the United States last week. And it was a very, very high-power study tour. Our rector and vice-chancellor, Professor Wim de Villiers, was part of the group. Our vice-rector of Strategy and Internationalization, Professor Hester Klopper, was part of the group. There were 4 deans and 2 vice deans. So 6 of the 10 faculties were represented. So the faculties who were not representative was theology, education, law, and military science. So you can hear all the big shots were there, right? So the Dean of Engineering was there, the Dean of Science was there, the Dean of Arts and Social Science was there, and the Vice Dean of Economic and Management Sciences were there. And these are typically the people who are now looking at each other and say, you know, who owns data science? We went to visit some very important and quite significant universities. So the University of Northwestern in Chicago, the reason we went there, Stellenbosch University has a very nice collaboration with them and exchange programs with them. So if there are any students from Stellenbosch here, if you want to go to Northwestern, go check out the International Office website. You can go there for a semester. It won't cost you a cent. It's absolutely fantastic. But there's a very good relationship, and they also have a very strong medical school, which is important for our rector because he's a medical doctor, right? So we talked a lot about medical data with them. Then we went to the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. The nice thing about the University of Illinois is it's absolutely dominated by engineering. I mean, the College of Engineering, I think, is like half of that university. It is so important. It was actually quite funny that they started a new medical school at the University of Illinois, but they attached that medical school to the College of Engineering, right? Because they believe the future of medicine is in engineering. Quite interesting. And their first intake of 35 of the class of 35 members. A majority of them actually have engineering qualifications, including masters and PhD in engineering, and now they're studying to become medical doctors. So it's a completely new way of looking at training medical doctors. Then, of course, this small little university called Stanford in Palo Alto, California, and this very important, huge university, University of California at Berkeley. Okay, so go Bears. Okay, I studied at Berkeley. And we don't like the trees from Stanford. But in any case, so very important universities. And what we found there is that among the 4 of them, there was some common ground. So the first is that there wasn't one person in any of our meetings who said data science is not important. They all said that data science is an important field of study, it's an emerging field of study, and our university has no choice to participate in that. So that, I think, is something that's very important. They also all told us that the students are screaming for this. The students are voting with their feet, and they want to major in data science. Now, if you don't understand the American system that well, you can actually enter university in America as what they say, undeclared. So you just take a bunch of courses, and after 2 years you decide, okay, I want to major in mathematics or computer science or biology or whatever. So there's a lot of students now in the system who says, we want to major in data science, but they don't have a major in data science available. They've got one in computer science and one in statistics available, but not in data science. So they are also under pressure. So we thought we were behind the curve. We're not. These guys are still figuring it out as well. They all agreed that industry demands graduates with training in this area. We had 2 conversations in San Francisco with people from industry, and they said that in California, in San Francisco, they can't find enough people to work in this field. Now, if they can't find enough people in this field to go work in California, because everybody wants to go work in California, right? It means there's worldwide a shortage of skills in this area. Then there seems to be a notion that data science is only a combination of stats and computer science, right? And most people who are thinking of this are thinking, now, how are we going to combine computer science and statistics going forward? They all agreed that there are 2 basic components. There's a core component, which is the stats and computer science, and then some people acknowledge, that there is something like machine learning, etc., artificial intelligence. But then they also say that there is a vast area of application that is very diverse. So there are people in medicine, in bioinformatics, finance, commerce, engineering, manufacturing. So there are a lot of people who don't want to be fundamentally data scientist specific, but they want to commit data science on their data. and they need to be supported as well. So they all see that there are these two markets inside the university. The specialists as data scientists, but then these other people who want to make use of these techniques that also needs to be supported in some way, either through some consultation, internal consultation in university, or by providing them with some coursework to get them up to speed. Sorry. But then they are all struggling with, because it's not clear that it is just a combination of statistics and computer science. Right? So some people say it's that, and some people are not quite sure it's that. Everybody agrees that stats and computer science is in there, but if it's only stats and computer science, they're not sure about that. Then the other thing they're really struggling with is, does it require a brand new academic department or even a new faculty? Or is it just the computer scientist and the stats guy should come together and teach a course on data science? They're not sure if they can accommodate this in the existing academic structures or whether it should span the whole academic project, including all faculties, like the proposition from Stellenbosch at the moment. Some people think it's primarily a postgraduate area of expertise, right? While other people think that it must have a significant undergraduate footprint as well. For instance, Berkeley has a module called Data 8. That module is now the most popular freshman first-year module in the university. They have 1,300 students per semester in that class, right? So 2,600 students, which is about 20% of all the first years who enter Berkeley will take that module in data science, right? It's very interesting how they teach it, and if anybody wants to teach in this field, you can come and speak to us. But the buzzword there is Jupyter Notebooks, okay? So go Google Jupyter Notebooks if you haven't. If you don't know what Jupyter Notebooks is, don't try to teach 1,300 students in data science. And then how to fund this, right? Because it comes back, even at universities like Berkeley and Stanford, it comes back that those who teach, that's where the money goes, right? So everybody wants to teach data science because it's going to be very popular and we're going to have these large classes. So the budget model of the university will reward us for that. And they are struggling to deal with that. So now I'm going to give you some of my personal views. So this is not official Stellenbosch University views yet, and it's also not Faculty of Engineering views yet, although I'm trying to convince my colleagues that we should go there. Firstly, I believe this is a new developing field, and I believe it's here to stay. It's not something that's not a fad. It's not, data is not going to go away. It's here with us, and it's going to be with us forever. Is a very dangerous word to use. But at least in my lifetime, and most of your lifetime, data will be with us going forward, and it's something that we need to deal with. I also strongly believe that all our students, and with all, I don't mean only our engineering students, I mean all our students, even the students who are going to study theology, right, needs to have some exposure to this field. Even if this exposure is just enough to tell them they don't know and they should go ask. That is important. Everybody should have some exposure. I strongly believe it's not only a combination of stats and computer science. It is much more than that. And as the field will develop, it will become more clear that it's not only stats and computer science. And there's a whole underlying theory, this is what I've been told, that needs to be developed. And then, most importantly, I believe that engineers can play a significant role in this field, developing the tools, the methodologies, the theoretical basis, and most importantly, the application of data science. One thing that I strongly believe that engineers bring to the table that very few people understand, or many other people really can't bring to the table, is this whole way of thinking, right? The way that we solve problems as engineers. It always starts with a physical system, and a physical system doesn't have to be a cell phone or an automotive vehicle. It can also be a financial system, a health system, a social system, or just a huge data set, right? That's a system. What we are good at is to look at that physical system and develop some model that we can try to make sense of what we are looking at, right? This model will usually be described by mathematical equations, relationships, right? We will then be able to take these relationships and program them or analyze them to either simulate the response or to optimize the response from that. And from this whole process, we will end up with a solution, an outcome, right? And then if we are real engineers, we always want to take the solution and go implement this on the actual system and see how that works, how it responds. Now, this whole way of thinking is something that engineers bring to a conversation around data. And I think, therefore, engineers will always need to be a significant part of a data science team. And I can tell you just a little story, anecdotal, one data point, right, that will reinforce this. About 4 months ago, we had a conversation with a South African who heads up Wells Fargo Asset Management in San Francisco. He's the president of Wells Fargo Asset Management. Wells Fargo is the second, probably the second or the third largest bank in the US, right? And the South African, Nicky Marais, runs Wells Fargo Asset Management. So we had a conversation with him and he says, well, explain to us, how did you use data science in your organization? And he came up and he told a very interesting story, etc. But the one thing that occurred again and again, he said, oh, and then the engineers came up with an idea to do this and that. And then the engineers did this and that. And he constantly acknowledged, and he studied BCom, right? I don't remember, I don't know if he's a CA, but he was definitely in commerce. So he's not an engineer, right? And he frequently referred, so in their teams at Wells Fargo, how it was the engineers who made significant contributions. And with that, I'm not saying that stats is not important, the computer science is not important. I just want to highlight that we as engineers bring something into this environment that is unique and should be recognized, both by ourselves and the people that we're going to work with. How are we doing with time? So a little bit on our plans at Stellenbosch. So firstly, we've decided, and this was also based on advice from our advisory board, to introduce data science into all 6 our engineering programs. At least one semester module per program. So at least we must be able to tell the mechanical engineers, you know nothing about data science, please go ask somebody else who knows something about it. Now, of course, those again of you who are in academia and looking at programs, this is always difficult to do, because if you want to put something in, you have to take something out. Now, whose pet topic are you going to take out of mechanical engineering or electronic engineering? At least industrial engineering already decided what they're going to take out, and they've already sorted this out. The second activity that we're busy with currently is to develop a curriculum for a 4-year Bachelor's of Engineering degree in data science. So we're going to have a new program that is going to be called data engineering, right? Brand new. From the ground, you enroll as a degree in data engineering. Now, I just want to take a pause here. One thing that was quite interesting in our visit was quite a number of universities told us that their in the US, their programs are no longer ABET accredited. Now, ABET is similar to our EXA accreditation. And we said, why? They said, because these guys were putting so many constraints on how we could devise our program, and it's really not important. So my suggestion at the moment is that the data engineering degree program will not be EXA accredited, because nobody is going to ask you, oh, tell me, you are now analyzing my data. Are you, by chance, a professional engineer? I don't think that's going to happen. So we will not seek EXA accreditation for our data science Bachelor's of Engineering. We are continuously consulting with industry to ensure that that what we're going to offer are relevant. So anybody here from industry who wants to make a contribution, you're more than welcome to contact me or Professor Schutte here and tell us, what do you think is important that we should include into our programs? We are going to create spaces. We have some space that we have identified that we're going to refurbish a little bit. We're going to have new spaces in the faculty where students and staff from across the university can study, work, and learn. And then, of course, if you want to do new things, you need new money. So we have to raise funds to grow this important activity in the faculty as well as the university. And then, who's from Takis here? Yeah. Okay, so if it's not common known yet, but Stellenbosch University has been able to recruit the top-rated, or one of the top-rated computer scientists, which unfortunately will be leaving University of Pretoria and joining Stellenbosch in January this year. So we are also recruiting new people into the system as well, but I don't put it here. So the Dean of Engineering apparently at University of Pretoria is not very fond of us right now. And then, while we were there in America, this story broke. MIT, that's the other little small college, you know, on the east coast of America, little university there teaching engineers. They're going to start a college. Now, a college in America is a faculty in South Africa. So they have the College of Engineering at MIT, but they're going to have a new college in AI, artificial intelligence. And in order to kickstart this little college of theirs, they have only budgeted $1 billion, right? Of which 340 million comes from Steven Schwarzman, right? You can go Google him, but he made a lot of money in the financial sector. So they're going to start what will be called the Schwarzman College of Artificial Intelligence. They're going to employ only 50 new professors, 50 new faculty in this new college, right? So in America, they have a saying for go big or go home, okay? So MIT is definitely not going to go home. They're going really big. But what is quite interesting is also they put a lot of emphasis on the ethical considerations around data and data science. So they made a big deal about how they're going to focus not only on the hardcore engineering side, but they're also going to look at the more softer issues of how do you deal with data in a responsible and in an ethical manner. So we didn't go to MIT, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, to be confronted with this news. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to me. We have some time left over, and I would really appreciate if we can have a bit of a dialogue. And again, remember my disclaimer in the beginning. I know nothing about data science. I'm only saying things that I hear from other people and in trying to build a little story for myself. Thank you very much. So are there questions or comments? Is that awkward time when nobody, yes, there's a, just hang on, they're going to bring you a mic.
Who needs to eventually make the call where in the university it's going to fit in? Is there somebody that can make that call?
Yeah, so now you're talking strategy and politics here, right? So I think my strategy at the moment is to try and convince the head of the university, the rector and the vice chancellor. Because if he gives a certain direction, then usually people might follow that, right? The real constraint is really the budget. It's where the money goes, right? So that makes it always difficult to do it. And Stellenbosch have a very specific case where many years ago, we had applied mathematics as a department in the Faculty of Engineering. Then we had a mathematician as the rector of the university, which was a huge mistake, because the first thing he did is he took applied mathematics out of the Faculty of Engineering and he put it in the Faculty of Science, and he tried to establish a new school of mathematical science with pure maths, applied maths, and computer science at that time, which is also the other anomaly, right? So computer science at Stellenbosch sits in the Faculty of Science. Of those 4 universities we visited, 3 of them The computer science department is either in the Faculty of Engineering, or at Berkeley it's part of the Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering, right? So the one idea might be that we would take, well, before I say that, applied mathematics at Stellenbosch University, if you go look at the research fields, 2/3 of the colleagues in applied mathematics do research in data science, machine learning, pattern recognition, etc., right? The 1/3 are actually mechanical engineers that look at flow and porous materials, right? So computer science in Stellenbosch and 2/3 of applied mathematics at Stellenbosch are actually, in some sense, already computer science data scientists, right? So that could form the core of a new school. But then where do you put it? You put it in the Faculty of Science, put it in the Faculty of Engineering, you put it outside somewhere, but outside is really difficult for governance issues. So short answer is, we have to convince the rector that it should be in the Faculty of Engineering, and then hopefully we'll get some support going down. But it will be an extremely difficult decision to make, right? It will be a painful decision to make, because somebody's going to lose, and nobody wants to lose. I haven't answered your question, I guess. There's another question over there.
I would actually like to respond to her question. The question is actually to ask, is data science a applied science, or is it a pure science? Is it like mathematics?
Yeah.
And then the science, the discipline of data science should be nurtured and grown in the natural sciences faculty and applied as you anyway plan to be applied in your other departments, or is it an applied science and then it should fit into the engineering faculty? Just some thoughts.
Okay, I'm gonna say a few things. That the first thing that I'm gonna say is not directly related, but it's something that it was in my slides, but I forgot to say that. I believe just as much as that everybody should know basic mathematics, I think everybody should know a little bit about data science. So the connection that data science should become like mathematics in some sense, I think is quite important for me, because when you live your life, you must be able to do some sums, right? But I think as we live our lives now, we have to be aware of data and how data can either help us or harm us. And therefore, everybody needs to know about data just as much as everybody should do sums. What was quite interesting is that at the moment, I think data science is definitely an applied science, right? It is something that is applied. But some of the comments we got was that, especially work with really, really large data sets, people are just doing stuff on it. They just, they're doing experiments by applying algorithms without understanding, fundamentally what the theoretical background of that is. So there are people who believe that there is still a fair amount of theory that needs to be developed to support and reinforce data science. So it's not only an applied science, there is a need for some theoretical development as well. But the final answer to your question is that everybody saw that there are these two broad fields, right? So the one is the core guys, the people that develop the methodologies, that test the methodologies, that has all the knowledge about the tools, right? And then there are all these other people who need to use those tools. The people in genetics, the people in bioinformatics, the people in health science, the people in the financial world. I always make, it's not a joke, but I'll say even the guys in theology. The Bible is a big book and there are many words in it, and you can also view that as data. So everybody has, in some sense, an interest of where that it will be applied. And yeah, I mean, does it then end up in science, or does it end up in engineering? I don't know. I mean, I'm more convinced now that the natural home is a lot more in engineering. And like at the University of Pretoria, they had a similar situation that we have, that their computer science and informatics was also spread into 2 or 3 different faculties. And I don't know how long ago it was. They took all of that and they formed the School of Information Technology, and they dragged all of that into the Faculty of Engineering. And I think it's a natural I think the Faculty of Engineering is a natural home for computer scientists. I think a computer scientist is much more comfortable in the Faculty of Engineering than in the Faculty of Science, where they have to deal, you know, the faculty board with microbiologists and zoologists and everything else. But in any case, that's just my personal opinion. There were some hands there at the back.
Okay, can I go? I just want to tell you, in response to the first question, I'm part of the Industrial Engineering Department at Stellenbosch University, and I didn't care about all the politics and stuff. At this moment, I'm not very popular because I introduced a data science module in Industrial Engineering, third year, second semester, and I dumped another module. So they are still busy with their politics and stuff, but we are going on because we are agile. we are industrial engineers. The module will contain fundamental work, application work, and then a final project to culminate and to reinforce the knowledge. So I think it's very exciting. So if you want to come and study again, start industrial engineering. Thank you.
Yeah, and while he's taking the mic to the back, that's exactly how Stanford operates. So the people at Stanford says, we don't tell the professors what to do, we let them do it. So it will be a bottoms-up approach. It won't be a top-down approach. So thank you for that, James. We really appreciate that.
James? It's the mechanical engineering subjects that you dropped to make space for it.
Yeah, of course they did. It was too difficult for those industrial characters, right?
Talking about disruption, how worried are you that if you don't move fast enough, basically you might become irrelevant? That with the if there's a breakthrough in online courses receiving credibility and being more accepted potentially by industry, that basically the university module in these fast-moving areas and the model just might not become relevant anymore.
Okay, I'm going to give you two answers because there's actually two questions in what you just said. So the one question is, are we not too late, right? And the question to that is, for something like that is fundamentally changing the way that we're going to operate in this world for decades to come, we can never be too late. We must do it. So whether we do it this year or next year, eventually we will do it. And what was a little bit encouraging for me is when I went to these very fancy American universities with lots more money than Stellenbosch, they are still struggling like we are struggling to introduce it. Some are a little bit ahead of us and some are more or less where we are. So I don't think we're too late. But that we have to do it is very, very important, and we have to push it as hard as possible. The other question that you have there, that you had, is like, well, isn't the online world going to take over, right? So people are no longer going to come to Stellenbosch or MIT or Harvard or Leuven or Twente or all these other universities. They're all going to study online, okay? Now, I've got a very strong personal opinion about that, and that is that no. And I'll tell you why. Learning happens in conversations with other people. Learning happens when you sit around a table with a colleague, a fellow student, and you struggle through a maths problem or a program that you're trying to write or a thermodynamics problem that you want to solve. So I don't see that online learning will ever take over the role of traditional universities, right? And at our university, we actually have a drive to what we call mode 2 teaching, which is this sort of online, everything happens in the cloud kind of business. And I'm of the opinion that we're wasting our time. There are other people around, and I'll give you a good example. If MIT now puts a course on data science, and Stellenbosch put a course on data science on the web, who's going to take the Stellenbosch University course? Nobody. Everybody's going to take the MIT course, right? So we're wasting our time and effort going online. But what we have at Stellenbosch, and Pretoria has it, and Potch and everybody has it, we have a community of students, we have good faculty, we have facilities where people can sit together like human beings and learn. And that is always going to be our key competitive advantage, and we will not be able to get away from that. So we won't go, some people and a lot of stuff will go online, but the fundamental training of engineering will always be in person, on campus, in labs, talking to each other. Right, do we still have time?
One more question. Morning, Werner Duplessis. I'm an industrial engineer that works in the banking industry.
Yes.
it's very exciting and fascinating to hear that these things are coming. And what I can tell you, over the past 12 months, we are recruiting data scientists as crazy. And my question is, are you involving industry in all of this? You had a one-liner there that says you are, but so in what ways are you planning to start engaging maybe us and industry to also help facilitating what we really need in terms of the workplace?
Okay, which bank are you from?
The best one in the world. Capitec Bank.
Okay, all right. So your chief IT guy is Wim de Bruin, right? So yes, we already had conversations with Wim de Bruin, and we are continue to having conversations with Wim de Bruin. And I can send you our document, and you can see that Wim de Bruin's name is there as somebody who supports it. Next week, I'm also having a telecon with the top information officer and his team from First National Bank. So we are talking to the best bank and the other good bank in South Africa that makes a lot of money as well. But it's an ongoing conversation. And of course, you know, there's limited time and limited scope. So we cannot speak to all the banks in South Africa because we also have to speak to all the insurance companies, Sanlam, Old Mutual, Liberty, Momentum. We also have to speak to Discovery and BestMed and all these people. We also have to speak to Mediclinic and Netcare and all these people. You know, it's quite a daunting task to speak to everybody, but we are speaking to the best new kid on the block, Capitec. Okay, maybe one final question, and then we'll call it a day.
We need to move on.
Okay, sorry, we're ready to move on. Okay,
Thank you very much. There was some fantastic discussion. Thank you very much, Prof. Wikus.